going on? What up? Welcome to Afternoon Tea with Hollywood Editing Mentor. We got Matt Colonna's eager to jump in here. this is live. You can tell this is live. All good though. We're gonna wait here for a moment to get people to join us. We were excited. We're hyped up. Come on in. I'm gonna start just kind of setting things up here, make sure everything's running smoothly, that we don't have any of the captions on. They're off. Great. I see people coming in. We'll start just in a little bit, just waiting for people to... There we go. ¿Qué onda, George Lopez? Good to see you, George. Anissa's here. What up, Anissa? Good to see you back here. Uh-oh, Edward is here. Good afternoon. What's everyone drinking? I hope it's tea. It better be tea. All right. What's going on? Welcome to Afternoon Tea with Hollywood Editing Mentor. My name is Joaquin Elizondo, the creator of the Hollywood Editing Mentor program. Great to have you here. What's going on? Who's drinking Squirt? Alex Ponce is drinking Squirt. Hopefully with some ice. ¿Qué onda, amigo? ¿Qué onda, Jesus? What's going on, dude? Good to see you here. It's been a while. Ben Park, of course. Can't have here some tea without Ben Park. Ben Park is here. Alex Ponce is having some Squirt and smoking a cigar. Great combo there. Matthew, hey there, Matthew. What's going on? Lina, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué onda, Lina? Un gustazo que estés aquí con nosotros. Cypress, good afternoon, Cypress. Cypress here. Man, they're here, man. Matt, they're here to see you, man. You got... So, yeah, guys, welcome to Afternoon Tea with Hollywood Editing Mentor. Again, my name is Joaquin Elizondo, the creator of the Hollywood Editing Mentor program. And I do this every kind of 2-3 weeks and open it up to just kind of bring the community together so people can ask questions and network and get to know each other. Ask me anything, I'll answer them here. If I can't answer them, then maybe someone else will give some insight or give you an answer. But today we have obviously someone here with us, a very special guest who's gonna take your questions about editing, music. This guy's a professional drummer. He was, I like to call him a rock star editor because this guy was a rock star or is a rock star and is an editor. So this is what it is to be a rock star editor. And so he's gonna tell you all about all his music and how he applies, music to editing and how it helps him edit and everything else. You can ask him any questions about any of the shows he's worked on. So he's gonna join us here real quick. But yeah, I'm glad everyone is here. We're gonna be here probably till around 5 and taking questions and whatnot. So just kind of wait a little bit here, a little bit more people to kind of jump on in. Let's see, David Torres, what's up? Having a mango bubbly. Well, great, sounds delicious. So hope everyone had a great time at EditFest this year. It was very interesting format, and I think it worked out. I think it worked out really well. The way they did it. Where they had the panels and then kind of similar to this, where you could interact right next to as the panel was going on and asking questions. So, it's awesome. If you haven't been to EditFest, I highly recommend it. Hopefully it comes back to the Disney lot next year. But if not, hey, it was awesome. Met a lot of cool people, and I'm sure they're going to be here today. So again, the idea here is to ask questions. Ask questions. I want people to ask questions. We can start a dialogue. Ask anything. Matt is going to answer your questions, and he's here. He's kind enough to join us here today on Afternoon Tea with Hollywood Editing Mentor. Okay. Oh, yeah, someone said, or Matthew said it was better, EditFest was better than last year. So there you go. All right, guys. And if you haven't been to check out the Hollywood Editing Mentor website, hollywoodeditingmentor.com/join. Get on the email list, subscribe to the newsletter. You'll get some cool exclusive content and some, future offers on on our future, or offers on some future courses that I'll be having there, digital courses on HollywoodEditingMentor.com. All right, so let's go. We have a special guest here today, editor Matt Colonna. You didn't hear, he was on the podcast earlier this week, episode 5 of the Hollywood Editing Mentor podcast, and talking about his great career. He's been doing this now for 24 years. He's worked on some amazing shows like Locke Key, Castle Rock, Narcos, Parenthood, Dexter. He actually wrote some original music for Dexter. And so, obviously, and he's a professional drummer, used to tour the world back in the day, still plays with his band around LA. He's a drummer, so he knows a lot about music. And so, definitely ask him anything related to music. I know certain people always ask me about sound and music, so we got someone here who can definitely give you some answers about that. So, I'm happy to have editor Matt Colonna is here with us. Matt, now you're on live. Let's go. What's up, dude?
Good to be here, Joaquin. Thanks, man. I'm happy to join you. Didn't mean to step on your introduction.
No. Hey, man, this is how it goes. We're live.
I don't work in the live medium, so.
I don't either. I just kind of hit buttons and see what happens. Dude, first of all, thanks for, doing the podcast. That was awesome. I had a great time chatting with you. And then, of course, being here with the Hollywood Editing Mentor community to take questions. So thanks, man. Just truly, really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Help, man.
Awesome, dude. I mean, I have some already. I can tell you that I have people here that really enjoyed the episode. Said George Lopez says, "Loved you on the podcast, Matt, and your work on Dexter." Fellow editor drummer here. George is a drummer and an editor.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's gonna have some questions for you. Alex Ponce says, "Hi, Matt."
What up?
Sean Montgomery says, "Dexter was so great, especially season 4. That season finale was just magnifique."
That was a good one. Man.
Dude, how was it? Yeah, talk about, I guess Dexter's a big one here. Talk about your experience on Dexter, man. How was it working on that show?
Dexter was great, actually. It was an interesting story because I came into that show as an assistant originally and assisting my longtime friend who's now directing, Rob Seidengland. And it was his intent just to sort of jump on a couple episodes because he was anticipating getting a pilot within a few months. So I joined, we joined season 2. It was the first one to sort of show up and post that day because they had we were all new season 2. So his new producer, so I first day, and the post producer is a good friend of mine, Chad Thomas. We joke about this because he was even telling me on that first day, we were just like walking through the rooms and like telling us like what we needed and we need to get chairs and all this stuff. He's like, I thought you were just gonna be this pain in the ass the whole season, but I mean, I had been assisting for like right around 7 or 8 years there. So by that time, I was like well versed on and they were sort of starting up and figured, hey, they were relying on me, to sort of turn everything over from season 1. Because I think they cut the show like on Final Cut season 1 or...
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, but there was something unique to how they were doing season 1 and they were everything to 24p season 2 so that we could just get post up. And we were still in standard def and all that crap back then. But and because the first assistant, I was scheduled to come on second, but the assistant who was going to start before me had a commitment or was going to start later. So I assisted a guy named Stuart Schill, who I'm actually music with now. He's directing an episode of Empire actually for he's in New York right now. But yeah, long story. I hit it off with him, and then my editor started up a second rotation. They're well entrenched, and I just through working with both of those editors, the show Clyde Phillips sort of got to see that I was really instrumental of what we were temp scoring that year. Because, he would kick stuff back and his editors would just hand me stuff. And I'd be like, okay, well, let me try this here. And what was key for me in musically on that show was, season 1 used a lot of Cuban music, which was very appropriate because it's set in Miami. But I was like, there's all this Caribbean vibe and, in Miami specifically. So I was like, we should broaden it to some reggaeton and, and maybe just even some reggae in general, or music with some Haitian flavor or something, just to mix it up a little bit. So I sort of like offbeat shit. So I threw some transitional cues in and like, hey, this is great. This is great sound for the show. I can remember the name of the cue offhand, but the first thing I temped, they couldn't hold to clear the master. They could just get the license. So they're like, well, we want to use a song, but we can't seem to clear the master. So I was like, well, I could take this back to my studio, with my band. And we basically made a sound alike, and I brought it to them a few days later. And, they're like, if we accepted the master fee, then they were all ready to go. So like the showrunner had the song he wanted and I was provided for him. And then that just, for that show specifically, that relation grew to the point where the following season, I believe it was, like we wrote, song form we performed on camera, lyrically, musically, and everything. So that was really cool. I mean, I really thank Clyde Phillips for that opportunity specifically, because like that's, I'd spent years as an independent musician, just like gigging and, trying to do showcase, doing all this crap, and not really making money out of it. And just like this windfall, all of a sudden, I'm happy to be on the show. Just is going to pay me like a couple $1,000 to listen to the song, and I was like, I never that like gigging and that is
yeah.
So that's when I started to see, like, oh, I see why all these composers in town are so really good gig when you can get it. Yeah.
Did you at any point, I guess maybe even after that, like consider composing?
Honestly, no. Just because I knew that was sort of a realm established with people, who are credentialed, who like, or bona fide composers that could sort of orchestrate and that type of stuff. Because I mean, I'd venture to say that the expansion, like scoring and doing stuff that, you can basically a sampler now, like, it wasn't as it is today. You know what I mean? Because like, when I was first assisting on the shows, like we had, a great composer, Blake Neely, and like, he he's that guy did. So like he compose, or orchestrate parts. It was always on shows where orchestras were presumed that be supplying the music, which is it's an awesome luxury to have. But actually, because he on Dexter too, like the composition isn't as great, and then there's been more shows now where the stuff is just synth driven. So I don't know, maybe the landscape was slightly different, I would have pursued it a little more, but I was already like, almost a decade established in editorial. So it was, what I mean?
Just I decided this is what I'm pursuing and kind of established.
Yeah. And then it was also more like gonna be musical. Like, let me hone in more on how this is really helping the story and not have it seem like I'm like trying to undercut a composer, a music supervisor's job or that kind of thing. So that's never intent. It's like, but I'm always thinking, hey, I can go one step beyond this thing. Like if I have an idea, I can like take it to the studio and, even if they use it ever, if it brings the right vibe or it's a way to, to the composer what we want, then, it's something I might do from time to time, but I don't make it a practice. It's like, it's, I mean, it's like, it's technically essence form. And being an editor, you sort of mix it up in a way that's sometimes there's no definitive lines, what I mean? So if I'm able to bring more to the table by, some music, it's always to help the storytelling, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's about the story, no doubt. Well, that's awesome. I just want to say, tell everyone, hey, we're talking here to editor Matt Colonna. He was just talking about his time working on the show Dexter. And so at any time you have a question, just, type it up. We'll ask Matt. He's here. We'll be around till like here around 5. And so just any questions, just hit us up. We're going to be talking here to Matt Colonna. What did you say, Matt? I think I'm having like internet issues today for the first time in a while. Cool, man. I mean, like, do you think like being a musician has made editing easier for you, or has it helped you?
I think it's brought to the table, a form of storytelling, even though it's nonverbal, if you're just talking specifically, so I guess, having been a part of, writing songs and being a part of writing, or even just noodling with a riff, and on that, like, you're taking an idea and you're building on it, and it's to a further extent that's definitely storytelling within music for sure. So I had always had this love of music since I was a kid. I just feel like it's sort of been, I mean, stepping into a cutting room and not for the first few times and not necessarily like I know I'm attaching motion picture together and we're doing something, but like it's like I don't know, at least for me, no one really came up to me and said like, hey, this is all just a storytelling. I just sort of knew like, oh, like part of developing this emotional arc in a song. I mean, the way I see it now is very much like, doing the same thing wise with a scene, or, an entire show or whatnot. I mean, because sometimes you have scenes that are just purely information but, it's like something to dig into certain moments that even might appear just when the scene's bare, like flat, but, yeah, it's sort of knowing where, like, God, in this moment, right, this took a great turn. We could really maybe get some tears in that kind of thing.
For sure.
Which I feel like we did sometimes on Parenthood specifically because we use so much music and it was so great because we could use so many great songs and we had a really good music team on that show too.
Yeah, well, we have our first question, but before we get to that, just because you mentioned Parenthood, I mean, I loved Parenthood. I've told you this every time I say, man, I love Parenthood, and it's awesome that you worked on it. Yeah, how was that experience, that show, and especially with regards to music? I guess you're talking about how that was a great, I guess, team that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Liza Richardson was our music super. It's phenomenal. I mean, what we were able to, because a lot of times I'll sort of, because I have a music background, I'll kind of familiar with a lot of things that were given to templates sometimes. But that was specifically where I could say like, okay, that wasn't my usual wheelhouse. But man, like anytime I dip into a bin of stuff that she'd give us, I'd be like, there's some really dope stuff in here, And that show specifically, the showrunners went at a Sarte style, and I know Jason likes music. And that was just really great because you could just play songs, to really underscore moments, whether they fit really into a scene or even if you really imposed it, it was. So I had a great experience once because I was coming into work one day and the Larry Trilling, our directing exec, like would panic to get a hold of me, and I get on the phone and he's like, dude, they were shot some rain at a cafe, and basically something happened with sound due to the conditions. And there was no dialogue. So he's like, you got to look at this right away and get back to us and see if we shoot it. And it was an emotional scene between the two cousins. And I remember like watching the dailies for 5 seconds. And I'm like, oh, I don't need dialogue in this fucking scene at all. As I was watching dailies, I just started thumbing through, some of Liza's team. And I was like, this is it right here. And it might have been like a Ray LaMontagne kind of something to that effect. But like I just sent Larry a, picture and music, and he was like, we're good. Like, fuck yeah. Like that's when the job's real, when it's just like, you've been tasked to do something, artistic and, throw it back. And when it takes off, it's always get notes. So,
oh no. Yeah.
So when it takes off, it's like, that's even better.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you about notes. Because I want to know more about it, how you handle it, and also I know people always ask me about notes. It's because there's not, you can't go look for it, advice on this stuff, necessarily online or whatever. But we have a question here from George Lopez.
Hey.
He says, has there been a time when you like the temp music you chose more than what gets replaced in the final edit?
Oh yeah, there's been several times. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's always due to various circumstances. It has nothing to do with like, not getting, something great or whatnot. I mean, sometimes it's personal preference where like, God, I liked our temp a little bit better. But I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of times it's just due to cost and time, and I mean, sometimes things get quicker or get more production than something quick. Cause you gotta be, very sort of supportive with users too, because they're they have to turn in last a lot of times, and then a lot of times they get notes very like on the stage a lot, and so it's they more oftentimes than not can't really it's just this thing where it's just like, well, now we're on the stage and now the showrunner wants to make this, so it's, and the composer could do whatever he can at that time. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things, but yeah, and yeah, for sure.
The answer is yes.
I stay so long-winded because I'm gonna get myself in trouble.
I gotta stop right there. That's awesome, man. It's kind of along those lines. I mean, this is more kind of relates to or it's about sound, but like, I know that sometimes like, we're in in a certain room for months, listening to a certain mix for a while. And then, come to the stage, things sound different. And it's nothing against, obviously, I've had this conversation with other editors. It's nothing against the sound guys or anything. I'm assuming it's just because you're used to being in an environment, right? And then suddenly you go into this huge stage and everything, and which has everything, obviously everything's calibrated. I mean, their equipment is great, obviously, and the guys are experts, but
yes.
your ear just gets conditioned probably to like a certain
and they're mixing to broadcast standards
right.
too. So, and like some runner will walk in and be like, "No, pump up the bass," and it's just like, well, I don't, actually translate for one on the other end, and two, like it's, what I mean. So it's like they're dealing with a lot of variables for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just and
they get like 4 days to do like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We get to know our mixes intimately, particularly if we're working on those for months at a time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because they've had people and they're like, turn that up just a little bit. So it's like you've known and done this all ad nauseum, and then all of a sudden you turn over sound, have 4 or 5 days to like, build it and then get on stage for days and mix it. So it's, I mean, they do a lot of work in that time. And I mean, one show that I felt was always great at it was Narcos. We would get stuff in, and what Loop Group would do specifically show, I was always like, man, like that's like you guys background to life finally, so it's yeah. But at times, I mean, because we talk about music a lot too, but like a lot of times my sound design, just as important sometimes, and and there is sometimes conceptually I know I'm bringing something to this design, and then it's like when it changes hands, it's just sort of like not there. But I mean, it's in every project thing, I mean, I'm sure you experience the same thing when you're on shows where you can really like lay into spotting sessions and take your time. Like, everyone sort of does a great job, but it's like when you're rush schedule, sometimes it's just like, oh, okay, like, well, I guess just mix this and move on.
What else? I gotta say though, man, when I was working with you on the Hot Zone, I would look at your cuts, and I would be like, let me see what he did in the sound here, because I know you had some tricks up your sleeve, and I know you did some cool stuff, and I learned, I think, a lot from about layering from you without you even knowing it. but no, I just
that is my thing though. In sort
of
ways,
yeah. No, I noticed it, and I picked up a lot of things, man, and I certainly till this day, I mean, I've gotten better at it, and people, what I'm talking about is like layering like sound effects and layering music.
Yeah. And like, I get you mean, like panning stuff and
EQing things, differently, or like for example, copying. Sometimes what I'll do, say to set, let's say a song is playing like in a bar or whatever out of a jukebox. I'll take the song and then duplicate it to layer it, and then say add EQ and maybe reverb to one, and then leave the other one as is, and then just kind of mess around like that, and I see it creates just a different.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were the one that showed me Outside the Club plug.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that you use a lot. I mean, in dramatic narrative, like you sort of need to have those subtleties in mixing. I feel because sometimes you're letting the dialogue take center stage, so everything sound cool, but you don't want it to like kill what they're showing.
Totally.
That's no, dude, it's I don't know if we want to go into these things now.
I know. We're just. I want to. Exactly. Yeah, we only got to. We only hear a couple. Till 5. So we definitely want to get to people's questions because they're coming in now. So I got questions for you. Let's see. We're gonna start with here. David Torres. He says David Torres is asking, how do you deal with music cues that are just not working within the scene you're cutting, but the powers that be are insisting on the cue?
Oh. That's a very good question. Oftentimes, there's a couple. I mean, there's two ways I find I discipline myself doing that. I mean, it's, there's definitely the times where you just sort of have to rate it and go like, look, I'm going to bring fucking grade A work to this music editing. I can't stand this piece of music. So, I mean, I feel like, at least for me, like, I know, I remember like creating a loop one time on Castle Rock during the pilot, and it took me seconds just because I knew where, my loop point was, and like Moss was really like impressed. And I was just like, dude, but I wasn't like dicking around. I was, sort of being professional, realize we're in a time constraint. Okay, that spike in the waveform, that's where I'm making my cut, because I know where it's going to loop around when it comes back to one. And, I mean, I've seen some other people sort of struggle through that, but getting back to the question, I feel there's a second way to do it too, whereas I do this all the time where if we discuss notes, we're going to have the same discussion too, where it's like, I get the note or telling you to do this or whatnot, and I'm just like, whatever. But then I want to say more often than not, you'll find a corner and then you'll be like, oh my God, like now this is fucking working. Like you kind of want to eat crow in those moments too. And I did like sometimes just to, and it's got me in trouble too, because sometimes I'll embrace too many things, or I'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's try it, because sometimes, it turns out that, oh, okay, like this is actually working. And, once I dial this in, this is a lot better. But it's a both. It's, it's sort of being open and having some patience, because, yeah, sometimes, maybe even like half the time you'll come to realize like, oh, like this is, this is actually working in a way. Because that's what usually when someone brings in a perspective, you're not seeing it because you've been locked in on a timeline for so long, and then once you finally forced to do it, you're like, God damn it, like that works. But there are those moments where the idea just sucks altogether. You just got to keep your mouth shut.
Just do it. Just keep going forward. That's awesome to hear. I got another question here from Sean Montgomery. He's asking, how did you go about getting your first assistant editor gig? Fellow 700 member here, joined in January and interested in knowing tips for getting on that first union show as an AE.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's, this was, 20 some odd years ago. So it's a little different now, because I feel, reality realm is going to allow you to essentially get the first 100 days to get into the union. But I'm assuming the question is probably that, how are you going to get hooked into these gigs, these union gigs?
Yeah.
Honestly, early on, I mean, I did have spells of big gap employment. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of it is part of the deal. I mean, it helped have some sort of base, financially, to sort of know like, okay, I might have to commit, 6 months to just looking for the job that and just not having any money coming. I went to film school at LMU. I remember like 15, 20 years later, I got in touch with a good friend of mine. And, first question he's asking me was like, how'd I gotten scripted? Because he was editing too, but it wasn't as scripted. It wasn't an IA stuff or union stuff. And like my whole thing was like, well, I just, I wanted to work on scripted stuff, particularly nowadays where there's so much reality. I think it's even more relevant. I mean, I feel like if you want to get into scripted, then into scripted, I feel it's just even going to be hard logistically, even to sort of, bounce forth kind of thing. Everyone I know that's sort of made the from reality into scripted has had to sort of like lock in and turn those reality gigs, just to keep it going. I find, you with a good attitude and you bring stuff to the table and you're creative and, you listen, I don't think it's going to be that hard to network, because that was a concern of mine too. It's, I didn't know anybody. But what I started to realize was, if I just, if I just do the job and I do it well and, and I'm good to people, like it's so gig oriented, and now there's so many shows. Hopefully they'll all be coming pretty soon. But, it's, hopefully within a matter of time, you get that momentum, because once you work with like a couple networks of people, like it's, that in and of itself, depending on what situations are, can end up, employing you for like, a couple of years straight.
Mm-hmm.
Because, after we did the pod, I was telling you, Joaquin, earlier that like, yeah, I had, getting, acquaintances back from when I was assistant, that stuff totally forgot, and names I hadn't seen or spoken to from, just hit me up, via Facebook or
just whatever social media or anything, email.
Yeah, so it made me reflect again, like, wow, that was, and I still know those guys. That's technically still part of my network. It's the network just grows, as the more you keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's an industry built on straight up on relationships. I mean, that's what I tell people all the time. I mean, I certainly learned that when I broke into scripted, a couple years ago. I mean, I quickly learned that. Oh man, I gotta really be out there, meeting people, but like establishing more of a relationship, with and build my network and be out there constantly. And also the financial side of things, man. I mean, I just had this conversation earlier today with someone. At some point you have to make a decision, right? And say, hey, I'm going to stick this out and pursue this. And it might mean I might do a couple fill-in gigs here and there, or, it might mean I just say no to reality or whatever it is that I usually work in, and just come to the point and say, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm only going to take on scripted gigs. But, having that kind of financial cushion, gives you that flexibility. It's just part of the gig.
Absolutely. Well, it's in a weird way. I kind of liken it to when I finally was able to buy a house. It's like you get locked into that mortgage, and that's part of your life. Like that's you just life. So
exactly.
Because that was always the thing that I would trip out on. Man, I got to pay for this mortgage once a month. I mean, rents were cheaper too.
Well, yeah,
But nowadays, but it's a similar thing. It's like I think a lot of times it's like a weird unknown, or it seems like a giant risk, but it's quite honestly breaking any industry. I mean, because we've had so much time off COVID. I mean, I would be lying if I said I had considered doing other things, but you look across the landscape and make a career change. I'm gonna have to invest in that and work my way too. So it's it's.
Oh no, I that thought has crossed my mind.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna stick it long run.
Yeah, dude. I feel you. But we gotta just hang in there. I think things are slowly coming back.
Yeah. It's funny. The person I sent to voice my boss. So.
Oh yeah.
That's the first time I heard from him in months, so I'm gonna be calling him as soon as I get up.
Dude, but I'm worried though, man. If Batman tests positive for COVID, then we're screwed.
No, I heard through a producing friend, the productions that have sort of picked up in Vancouver, that unions up there were getting kind of a little, what do you say? Getting a little, not offended is the wrong word, but they were telling that like, hey, like at the rate that you having these are testing right now, it's they're like, within that time, we could almost consider this borderline harassment, because their view is, I mean, just locally, they have the whole thing more under wraps. So it was interesting to hear, like, whoa, like that's a whole different perspective. We're like testing the crew and the cast too much, like, you know what I mean? So it's pretty invasive. I mean, people get tested 3 times a week, and other people set once a week. So it's, I mean, it's gonna be a big pain in the ass for production people for sure.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the guidelines for shows. Oh, yeah. It's wow.
Feel for him.
Yeah. Dude, I have more questions here. This is probably from someone you might know, Chuy Rosales.
Oh no! I know Chuy.
¿Qué pasa, vato loco? Hey. What up, Matt? He says, how much time do you spend with sound design? Have you ever heard your sound effects make it to the final mix? And what is your favorite scene to sound design on Narcos?
Well, I'm sorry. What was the first?
First question was, how much time do you spend with sound design? And then, have you ever heard your sound effects make it to the final mix?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, a lot of times. Sometimes, depending on the scene, I could be spending, I mean, you get some sort of like cerebral scene that's going to require something, unique. Like, I feel like, I mean, sometimes I'm not talking like days or months or whatever, but, sometimes I'll very quickly cut done, so I could just embellish what I would probably be normally spending time picture editing to dial this thing in. And we talked about this before. Season 2 of Dexter, episode 2, that entire basically I built, because we had to turn episodes 1 and 2 around real quick, the TCAs, and what ended up being that mix was deemed good enough for the final when it was all said and done. I mean, I urged to make the TCAs, but like everyone loved it, so I went to the stage and I was like, this is all my shit, guy. I mean, in large part, so it was very flattering, and I mean, and given the schedule, I've ever been the case. And yeah, I'm sorry.
What was your favorite scene to sound design on Narcos?
Um, Unfortunate change because we couldn't get the song that went into it, but it was the finale for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo's going through his sort of his sort of mental passage before he meets his ultimate demise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was this moment where he left his hiding place and went.
Oh, I love when he buys the ice cream and stuff.
Yeah, but it was really cool because within the car, like it naturally, but like he goes through this tunnel, and that was our sort of vision at the time of like his literal passage into what's going to a metaphysical reality coming in at the other end. And we used a piece of music specifically that was unlike show because it felt very childlike and dreamlike, and it put him in just a different headspace. And because when he gets in that, he sees his his good buddy who, previous season, Gustavo. So that was a good moment. It was very simple, which was really awesome. Yeah. So that's out. Yeah.
I love just on Narcos, picking songs on that show because sometimes it's like, dude, what are you using? Like, what? And then you put it in there, and it's like, oh, dude, it totally works. And it's like just like what you would never think. I mean, it has taught me just to kind of think really outside the box with regards to music and maybe even also editing in general.
Well, what was interesting for me in that show, I mean, that got me to just sort of broaden, my horizons because I wasn't that familiar with cumbia, and then just history of it, how it's very Colombian in its origin, and it's how I've heard it as being Mexican music,
Right.
So, but even within the confines of just that enormous, array of Latin music, being able to find stuff, it was to like, just deviate from, whether they were sort of songs with English lyrics or whatnot, but not the usual stuff where I was, used to dipping in. I mean, a lot of shows sometimes you score from, the same thing a lot of different shows, but that was clearly, I went into that going like the thing I do about this series has to be different because the series is different. So
Totally.
Yeah.
We have another question here. George Lopez wants to know, what do you look for in an assistant? I mean, I know you've been with your assistant for a while now, but I mean, like, what do you look for, or what did you look for before, or?
Someone to help me with my job. I mean, but my sad with assistants in the last probably 10 years is that you guys move up a lot quicker. So it's you used to sort of invest in a relationship with someone maybe for like a decade, before they up and moved on. So it's like I've had some really really great assistants who I felt were good as I was at my job, and in those instances I'm like, wow, like this is I can, particularly if you have same sensibilities, you could throw them a scene, or like have them tell you sometimes. And I mean, a lot of times in certain schedules, sometimes you get stuff back and your assistant puts a piece of gold together. Wow, like I want to work with this person forever, but they're going to start cutting up pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, doing this, I mean, actually, yeah, I've been working with Alexis for a long time, and honestly, selfishly, I don't think she would mind me saying this. She's a career assistant, so I went into that knowing that. It's not that I didn't want to. I mean, a lot of I just wanted to, I mean, she's rock. I mean, as far as what I would be a qualified assistant, a good assistant. I mean, artistic stuff aside, I mean, be able to do turnovers really good. I mean, it's like whether tasks are considered mundane or not. Like once you have to turn them over, right? I mean, everyone's afforded a mistake or here or there or what. Like it's understanding what the vendor specs are. If you're going to be in the room taking notes, keeping diligent notes, like just being on top of your shit. And more or less, there's so much more than creativity going on in that. Then you have to switch gears right away and be just as creative as I am in a room, spending all day being creative. So it's, yeah. And this is rock solid. I mean, she's, even though she's been assisting for years, I was one of the first editors to ever like give her scenes to cut, and I mean, she's been doing this at least 10 years more than me. So like it in my mind, and so it's actually with her, it's been opposite. She's been rock solid with all the assistant stuff, and she's been broadening herself more as an editor now, since she's been assisting me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have these conversations a lot with assistants. I mean, about like, how do I need to be the best assistant out there? And I think what they're referring to is simply technically, I think, more than anything,
Yeah.
I often say, hey, obviously you got to know your shit. You got to know what you're doing. But you really, it's about, I think a lot of it has to do with the attitude and what you bring to the room and how, say, you're hungry you are. And, being, say if you do make a mistake, own up to your mistakes and just be kind of proactive, more than anything, proactive, kind of anticipate things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel the more you get, the better. I mean, what you sort of don't want is to be sort of what to do, every step of the way. Because I mean, it's a tough job, because you, particularly in TV, you're there to work for your editor, and you could be hired in a million different ways, but you're also there to work with the, post producer. So, and I came into it from the editor side. Like I necessarily know that I had to sort of be on the same, wavelength as my producer as I did the editor, because, it changed a lot more too. Whereas I feel like maybe we had autonomy back in the day, whereas now I feel like, you get on a show the same level as the producer, and, things are demanded out of, each of you in your own jobs respectively. So you got to balance. I mean, if your editor's your good buddy, you got to know how to work with them, but also, do all the requirements of the show. I mean, sometimes they're doing things for critics, or the network needs, or someone's got to cut a sizzle reel, or there's like gaps that need to be done. It's that's these and some of the things I listed aren't really what assistants are supposed to do. But we all know in the real world that these things might cross your path from time to time on unscripted shows. So you gotta I mean, yeah, and the more versatile you can, just even handling stress, because a lot of times as the editor, you leave, and granted, everything, we're all working remotely now, but you leave for the day and your assistant's still there, and you got to put the fact that cut's going to get uploaded, and when it's 3 a.m. and you get on your TV screen, that you're not going to like freak out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, watch my back.
Well, that's a big part of it. I have a question here from Jesus Huidobro, el compa Jesus. He says, they're asking, ever find yourself having to keep peace in a room full of excuse me. Man, ever find yourself having to keep the peace in a room full of producers who have different opinions?
Yes, and in many situations. I mean, because the ideal setting is that it's you with your showrunner, and that could be one or people. I mean, usually that audience in your room is pretty small. Sometimes post producers will be in there constantly, and sometimes they won't at all. It depends on, kind of what your showrunner wants. I mean, have I pulled people apart? Not literally to that extent, although I did have to do that, but this was many years ago, and it wasn't sort of like how I work nowadays. But yeah, this was like on an indie film, like in '98, where no one should have been working on that.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
But yeah, people sometimes many times, opinions get heated, and so, I mean, sometimes what I find is a little more kind of having to choose a side, because sometimes you have showrunners that are partners, and more often than not, you might be aligned with one creatively, so that's, and then I feel the job of the editor is to to make these ideas realities, to what you can. Because, I mean, a lot of times they're expecting to see things that's not even in the material to remind them, like, look, this is what we got, what I mean? So, but, yeah, you do have to sort of mediate, when it comes to things like that, to let people know rationally and, gently, like, hey, like, that's a great idea, but, like, I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off given the footage, that we got. So if you can offer solution at that point, that's great. But situation's different.
Yeah, I mean, I know how earlier we kind of brought up notes. It's just kind of quickly want to get into that real quick. But again, how do you communicate? Say, let's say someone gives you a note, and a director or a showrunner or producer, or whatever, like, and you don't necessarily agree with it. How do you communicate that? Or if you think you have another say idea of how to solve this a problem. Like, I mean, what do you say to someone, like a showrunner?
Because I've at this point in the jobs I've done, I've sort of had it come in many different ways. I find more often than not, ideas will get pitched in the room. As much as I want to believe people can visualize these things in their mind, to a good extent can't. So it becomes incumbent upon us to show them versions that they can make informed decisions. And that really depends on the dynamics of the job and how many versions you're going to be making and at what if you're in a crisis and they want things worked out, you're trying many things, and in many part, in a lot of ways, that's the subtlety of the discipline of the gig, to sort of kind of be able to roll with it, because the last one to be is an agent of stress. I mean, and I know a lot of who might want to fight for something in a cutting room, but I subscribe to the notion that it's like, if I feel strongly, I'm definitely gonna voice it. I'll try to create the platform for discussion. But if I'm getting shot down, like, on with the day. I mean, I'm not gonna die on a hill, if it's not worth dying on. But there's definitely been moments I've felt really strongly like, hey, like, I just think this is a good idea, and I hear like, no, I think this works, and this, and then it's a collective. The emotion that tells you like, oh, I hate this, but you have to kind of suppress it, because you're working in a collaborative medium with other professionals, and it's want it all your way. You got to, make your own show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's we want to bring our art into it, and you can. It's just maybe sometimes about like going, okay, like I'll. I got to make this breakdown in my mind, it being this, because then when I come to work every day, I understand what I'm doing, because that's the beauty of this. Times you get leeway and you don't even know it, and then as you're working episode, by the time you're fourth or fifth, you're like, holy fuck, like, look at when I watch this episode, I can see my fingerprints all over it, and those are definitely the networks you want to retain, and the shows I mean, a lot of times those shows only live for a season, so. You got to enjoy them when you're on them. You know what I mean? So I don't say they're few and far between, because there's a lot more shows now, and I feel like there's more people involved. I mean, I feel like there's a lot. There's probably less experience at the showrunner position sometimes too. It's like maybe veterans like me can help. Be a sort of pulling force. Where it's like once I start bringing. I mean, obviously editors can't do this, but I could bring up examples of. Similar situations that happen on other shows. And, a lot of times that puts the showrunner at ease, going, okay, like, yeah, I see what he's talking about. And, I mean, because we're telling stories, and ultimately they don't want you to like, I remember one of my claims of fame on Narcos was my VX were always very minimal episodes. Yeah. And that question would always come up. And I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I'm just cutting stuff practically. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. Formula for that in my head. I'm just using the material and trying to
Yeah, totally. No, I totally get that, dude. We're gonna start winding things down here with Matt Colonna. Again, thank you, Matt, for being here. We're gonna take maybe a question or two. We do have one right here from our buddy George Lopez. I love that he's asking questions. He's saying solid, he's on it, dude. He's on it. He's on fire. George is trying to works in news right now and is trying to transition to scripted television. So I've been working with him and over the last couple of weeks, he's doing the mentorship program, and so I've been working with him. And great guy, very interested in a musician. He's very hungry, and so he's awesome. I'm glad he's participating here today. He's saying that coming from a DAW background, audio DAWs, do you like to mix and EQ your edits?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of my time just like cueing and mixing, just my own music project. I mean, I know even like if I'm laying down a drum track that, okay, it's going to this once I bring in a cakewalk and do X, Y, Z, like I'm able to get what I'm hearing in my head. You know what I mean? So I do the same thing. I mean, if I got like a quiet, like delicate moment or eerie moment, you know, I mean, I mean, a lot of times I'm not necessarily wise at like cites moments in other movies, but I will look for some sort of inspiration, you know, and subsequently a lot of times it's something that I'll end up watching during the time where I'm working on that, and I'll see it. Oh man, like look how they did that fucking sound design. Like it was nothing. It was this, and like maybe, you know what I mean? I try to make it as organic process as possible. What I always try to not do is go, what would be a good idea for this? You know, I mean, I always try to like put the problem in my head and kind of always be sort of percolating on it. This way, if I'm at a gas station and I see a billboard, you know, like it could trigger, or, you know, there might be something that relates to what I'm working on. So I feel like I don't know if that's an editing trick or what. I try not to get, I try to keep, whereas I'm experiencing like everyone else, stresses and, you know, all the issues that you're on throughout, try to keep this kind of Zen thread just about doing at the moment. Just, I want it constantly sitting in the back of my head. I don't want me up at nights. I actually kind of want it to be something that I can ideally train myself into being like, okay, this is kind of my happy place. You know, when I'm, you know, when I have elements to deal with and I'm piecing them together, this is really the world to give opportunity to be able to do this. So like the job can be really stressful, but trying to keep that in the back of my mind is, you know, I mean, we could all be fucking digging ditches or doing something really crazy. So it's like, you know, we could sort of piss and moan about it. And granted, the situation sucks, but you know, it is kind of, you know, for people like us, I think it's better to be doing what we're doing. You know, I mean, I think that's where you know, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, I think that there's no reason why we're doing that. You know, so it's like keep that going, because it's the job and the turnarounds they're always going to be there. You know.
Yeah, that's just not gonna go away, right? I mean, I think you have to really kind of, you have to love what you're doing, right?
Yeah, it's stuff to you, and people are pissed off, and like something comes down, you're just like, oh, whatever. It was a show I worked on not too long ago. You know, the showrunners were new to TV and notes back from the studio, and the studio did not like it. The thing I was going to do was let that ruin my fucking day, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, I was ass off until that point, and I knew I'm going to be working my ass off from that point on. So, you know, it's like the studio's got a problem, then we just need to go back and keep working. You know what I mean? So
that's what it is, right?
Oh my God, to do, and you know, I'm not going to, that's not going to kill me.
Yeah, I tell people, it's like, yeah, sometimes we can't, yeah, we got to be aware of that, conscious of like not creating these, stressing ourselves out, right? I mean, like, you know, it's not, we're only just kind of, you know, creating more problems. So yeah,
you're never going to turn something in and have them be like, perfect, let's lock it. That never happens. So,
has it happened in your life?
It's just expect it's a process, you know what I mean? It's not going to be perfect every day. Like, you know, they're going to cause you some misery at some point.
Oh, man. Well, hey, dude, people have here enjoyed all the information. Trevor Lindborg says, thanks for all the info. He's very appreciative. Jesus y Dobro, thanks, Joaquin and Matt. This was great. People really, dude, I mean, I appreciate you, man. Like I said, you being here and like I said, doing the podcast. I mean, and then doing this. I mean, this is awesome, man. I mean, this is what, you know, I'm trying to do here. You know, it's like share information, not just for myself, but also my friends, colleagues. And you know, let people hear your experiences. I mean, you know, and obviously you've been doing it way longer than I have. You have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's like the thing no one really ever comes to, you know, your class to ever sort of whatever. I mean, I feel like if you're going to get into accounting, you know, there's going to be numbers. You getting into what we do for a living, it's like, you know, it's like even know the roles people play and what their titles are. It's like, you know, just even knowing puts you, you know, you just go into it informed, you know. So, but yeah, it's been great. Honestly, I've actually got, not to self-plug or whatever, but I finally got a webpage set up for me. It's MatthewColonna.com, and there's contact info there. If anyone wants to give me a shout or if they got a question, you know, I'm more than happy to you know, shoot back or, you know, just a thanks or whatnot. So
there you go, guys. You heard it, MatthewColonna.com.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, two N's in Colonna. MatthewColonna.com. Check it out. He said Matt's down to help, and you can find out more about him on his webpage. Ben Park.
I mean, unique time, so I feel like it's good for me to give sort of the traditional advice, but we're all embarking on something that's to all of us. So it's
that is true. Yeah, and that's a conversation I have with people. It's like things. I mean, I can certainly talk about everything pre-COVID, and but now it's time we have to pivot, and it's a new approach. I mean, and part of it is this virtual kind of networking. I told people just because we're communicating through Zoom doesn't mean we can't network, and I think that it's the time to network is right now.
You couldn't have said it any more accurately, dude.
So David Torres says, thanks, guys. This and the podcast were full of great advice. David Torres, thank you very much. Ben Park says, thanks, Matt. George Lopez, our boy George Lopez, thank you, guys. Looking forward to a part 2 on the podcast. Jesus, see you guys in a cutting room, hopefully soon. So, dude, Matt, thank you very much, dude. Thanks for being here.
Hey,
I hope, dude. Man. I hope we, like I said in the podcast, hope we can hang out soon, obviously, and go back to work and everything. And but I wish you the best of luck, dude. Hang in there. I'll do the same. But thanks, dude. I hope to have a cup of coffee with you, some espresso.
Absolutely.
Pretty soon, dude. Awesome, man. Chewy wants to let you know that Matt Colonna is the coolest down-to-earth editor in the industry. Wow. All right, dude. Matt. Hey, Matt, thank you very much, dude. Thank you.
Peace, man.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Thanks for being here on Afternoon Tea with Hollywood Editing Mentor. And I'm glad you got to meet my friend, Matt Colonna. If you want to find out more information about the Hollywood Editing Mentor program, head over to hollywoodeditingmentor.com/join. Join the email list. Like I said, I get you some exclusive content and some deals and offers on the future courses that I'm putting together for Hollywood Editing Mentor. Thanks again. Appreciate all of you. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks. You'll definitely be hearing from me. But thanks again, guys. Honestly, cannot do this without you and your support. And so thanks again, and I will see you next time. Take care of yourselves and wear that damn mask.